Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. So today I am doing an artwork with my toned grey paper and my Prismacolor pencils. And I wanted to do something interesting. I have done a lot of videos where I've done colored pencils or paint or ink on black paper, but I do have a lot of this toned grey and toned tan paper, so I definitely wanted to try that out and see what I could create with it. So you know what, let's get to it. So as usual, I started off with a sketch that I then traced onto my paper using my light box. Now with this light box, I sort of forgot that, because it's been quite a while since I've used this tone paper, that it's kind of difficult to see the sketch underneath because the paper is sort of dark, or it's not overly dark, but it is a lot darker than white paper. So that did make it a little bit difficult at first, but since it was a fairly simple sketch, I just took my time and went through and sketched out all the details that I wanted. Now I originally wanted to do a sort of pastel color palette so that I could call this a pastel dragon. So what I did was I went in with a sort of darkish blue color for the liner instead of black, and then I was going to go over with light pastel colors and get some nice sort of tones and variations. Now I didn't use just blue in the liner, I did add a little bit of green and a little bit of purple as well to sort of get some variations. Now after that I added a sort of lightish blue to some parts which I chose to do highlights on. And then after that I sort of built up the colors where I saw fit. I added a lot of sort of blue and pinks and purples and colors like that. However, I started to get into a bit of a problem. Now with the pencils I didn't have a whole lot of pastel colors. I sort of assumed that I had more than I did. So once I got down those highlights, I was like, okay, now what do I do? And then I look into my pencil tin and there's all of these sort of mid-tones and dark colors. And I was like, okay, so I guess I wasn't able to do exactly what I planned. However, I still am pretty happy with the results. So as I started adding more colors to this artwork, the color palette sort of shifted to a sort of neon color palette, mainly because I did sort of not really care too much about shadows and highlights in a way that I could sort of get different tones of the same color. I sort of was just like, here's a green highlight, here's a purple shadow, here's a green shadow, here's a purple highlight, and I just sort of put colors all over the place where I just felt like doing. And to be honest, this was pretty freeing because a lot of the time when I'm drawing, I am a little bit strict in which colors I should put where and however, trying to make it look realistic and that kind of thing. But this time I was just like, I'm just going to slap color all over this thing and just make it super, super bright and happy and colorful. And yeah, we sort of ended up with a bit of a neon color palette here. So I'm actually not too mad about that because it kind of looks a little bit cool. Now the pencils on this grey toned paper, it does work pretty well. However, this is a bit of more of a sketch paper than a mixed media or pencil sort of paper. So I wish I had a bit of a thicker paper with a bit more tooth on it, and I'm pretty sure they do sell a mixed media toned tan paper, so I might actually get that in the future when this book sort of runs out. But however, it still turned out pretty nice, and I definitely can get a lot of color and pigment onto that paper, so I'm not too mad. Now for the wings, I did want them slightly different to each other. For the first wing that's closer to the viewer, I sort of have a lot of pinks, oranges, blues and yellows, and it's sort of really warm looking. Now the other wing I chose to do a bit of a different way because I wanted it to sort of I wanted it to sort of push towards the back a bit more, so I did put a bit of green and blue and purple into that one. However, it was a fair bit darker than the rest of the image, so I kind of didn't like how that turned out, and I wasn't exactly pleased. But I ended up actually fixing it up afterwards with some of my workable fixative. Now for this artwork, I'm definitely not just using colored pencils and toned grey paper. I know that's what I titled the artwork as, however, I still want to add some little bits here and there of slight other art supplies that might enhance the artwork better, still showcasing those pencils as the main event. So yes, I'm using my workable fixative over the top of these pencils, and that pretty much just adds a clear layer of a sort of fixative that seals the pencils down, as well as adding a little bit more of a matte texture over the top. And that actually helps me a little bit to layer up the pencils a bit more when I burnish them. Burnishing basically means where you push really hard down on the paper and get all of that pencil on the paper, and you sort of get rid of the tooth a little bit because you're putting as much pencil as possible down on that paper. So once you burnish it, it's kind of really difficult to layer any pencil over the top. And yeah, that's where that workable fixative helps me so much, because it just lets me layer in a little bit more pencil to get it to where I want it to be. So as I said, I added a little bit more lighter colors over the top of that wing, just to soften the shadows a little bit, because it did stand out a bit too much. And yeah, I just used some light-ish blue colors and light purpley kind of colors just to sort of camouflage those dark shadows a little bit so it wasn't as intense. Now for the smoke coming out of the dragon's mouth, I basically tried to get a little bit of a transparent effect where you can see the details behind the smoke. However, all of that is sort of shaded in a bluey purple kind of look. And that's just a little bit of an effect that I wanted to try out with these pencils. I have done it in the past with markers, but not so much with pencils. Now, just to add a little bit more detail to that smoke, I did add some lighter colors of just a bit of a swirly pattern, which isn't really realistic or anything like that, but you know, going off this illustration, it doesn't really matter too much if it's not realistic, because one, dragons aren't exactly a thing in real life, and two, something wouldn't be colored this way in real life. So I was just kind of focusing on what would look cool and interesting, if that makes a bit of sense. Now that we got most of the pencil down, I kind of still felt a little bit strange about this artwork. I wasn't 100% happy with how it was turning out. The colors looked really cool and bright and colorful, but there was still just something a little bit strange about them, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But then I realized that I should probably add some highlights to this illustration. So obviously I started off doing a white outline around the dragon, which I then completed, but with my gel pen I decided to add some stars to this dragon. And once I added those stars, it made a lot more sense, and I actually really like it how it turned out. The stars on this sort of give it a bit of a galaxy kind of effect. Definitely not a realistic galaxy, but one of those super colorful rainbow neon sort of galaxies. So yeah, with that in mind, I pretty much went over the whole dragon and parts of the swirly effects on the smoke as well, and I just added lots of little highlights here and there with stars. And I'm actually very happy with how that was going, because it kind of just added this sort of glowy, magical, sparkly effect to this dragon, which definitely gave it a very different feel, almost like a mystical, magical fantasy kind of vibe. And I really liked that. So I pretty much just went over the whole thing and had a lot of fun, because galaxies are something which I love to draw as it is, and yeah, once I did that, I was just having so much fun drawing the rest of this dragon, and I was very happy. Now here's a little bit of a tip. Usually gel pens don't really draw very well over colored pencil, in my experience anyways. I think the sort of waxy, shiny effect of the colored pencil doesn't really go well with the sort of wet texture of the ink. And in the past I have not been able to do color pencil and gel pen together because of that. However, I did put a bit of workable fixative, a nice sort of layer over the top of the illustration afterwards, and that pretty much completely solves the problem because it adds that bit of a matte texture onto the art. The gel pen sticks perfectly, and yeah, I was actually able to achieve that. So if you want to add a bit of gel pen over the top of your colored pencil work but it's not working, try a bit of workable fixative, because that stuff is like pretty much a lifesaver. So anyways, once we got that whole outline done and all the stars done, here is the final results of this artwork, and I am very, very pleased with it. It's very sort of sparkly and different and magical kind of looking. However, I like it, and I hope you guys like it too. So here is the final result, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I like the colors. They're definitely a little bit interesting, but the stars and the white gel pen over the top did make it pretty nice. I definitely didn't do just pencils because I used my workable fixative and the gel pen. However, it's mostly color pencil, so I think that counts. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you click like and subscribe and check out my other videos if you're interested, and I will see you in my next video. Bye everyone!